Hi, I'm Kristen and this is Scrap Fabric Love, and today I'm going to be making my first ever on-point quilt with this.
So an on-point quilt, if you've never heard of one, is one where the blocks are kind of turned on a 45-degree angle, which you can obviously see more if the blocks are pieced. For my quilt, I'm using charm pack squares, so there's no internal block piecing. It's just 5-inch squares, but I'm putting the rows together diagonally so they run across the quilt. So this is what my quilt is going to look like when I'm finished and I have it all trimmed up. But rather than piecing a lot of rows that are going to run diagonally and then adding triangles on the end to finish them up, I'm going to piece my quilt like this. So the white in the background there is nothingness. It's not white triangles. And then I'm going to trim off the edges later. To me, that seems simpler and makes more sense. You might not agree, but anyway, that's what I'm doing. And I'm putting the free pattern for this up on my blog. So you'll find the link for that in the description if you're interested in following along.
So if you missed last week's video, basically I was going through my UFOs, so my unfinished quilting projects. And this one's been sitting in a box for a good while. I did explain in that video that it's intended to be a baby quilt, but it's quite large, so that might have confused some folk. I will explain later in the video why it is the size it is, and also why I am not going to rip off the black that is on this quilt, even though pretty much everyone in the comments was telling me I should. So I'll speak to that later. But what I did in that video was categorize my UFOs into ones I wanted to get done quickly. This was one of them. Ones that I was going to park, but I was still going to get to, and ones I was never going to get to. So some of those are on their way to viewers who said, I'll do it. So one's already off and away, and the others, I'm in the stages of working out postage and stuff like that. So that's cool. So I'm already I think 4 UFOs down. So hooray for me. But today I'm going to show you how I'm attacking this quilt, what I've been thinking of doing an on-point quilt, because I'm probably doing it slightly differently than what you're supposed to, because we know I don't always follow all the rules. And I'm also kind of putting myself under a deadline, so I'm going to timestamp myself. It is Monday morning, UK time, and the plan is to get this quilt top finished today, hopefully get the backing pieced today, and I'll see how far I get. My ideal would be to get it loaded on the long arm today, maybe even start quilting it, but that might be a bit ambitious. But just to put that all in context, I generally put my videos out on a Tuesday, so it's Monday morning, and I want this quilt finished for the Tuesday video. So if the video came out on Wednesday, you know I didn't make that deadline. But if it came out on Tuesday, yay. So anyway, let me get started. So what I began with was this. So I wanted to do an on-point quilt. Never done one before. I've only ever done either totally abstract or rows, like horizontal, vertical, rows and columns kind of a quilt, right? But I had this idea. I like bright colors. I wanted to do a kind of rainbow thing. So I wrote this. This was my pattern. Again, before the video goes out, I intend to get this more digital and put it on my blog.
I did indeed do that. So if you go to the blog, you'll find all the information about how many charm pack squares you need and how many colors, how many go in what row, all of that. The rest of this video is a bit more of a day in the life of trying to meet my own internal deadline to finish this UFO. So I hope you enjoy it.
So you guys can have a go at it if you want to. But basically, I just sort of decided where the different colors were going to go. I had a bunch of, the other reason behind this quilt was I had a whole bunch of charm pack squares collected from various places. I'm a bit of a hoarder of other people's leftover fabrics, so I end up with a lot of stuff. So anyway, I decided to make it rainbow. So I started with like yellow and then green, blue, purple, and I'd kind of set myself an order for all the colors to make it look the way I had in my head. But what I didn't do was calculate all the setting triangles because I didn't want to. So what I'm thinking is once it's all pieced and quilted, I'm just going to trim. So it's going to end up slightly smaller. Maybe that's a bit wasteful. I don't know what's more wasteful, because I always end up, usually when I quilt, with some funny edges because I don't base things properly. So I usually end up trimming a bit anyways. So I'm thinking this might be the easier way forward for me, but not done it before, so I don't know how it's gonna work out. We'll see, right? So anyway, enough, blah, 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 right? So first thing I have to do is press this because it's been crumpled, not very well folded in a box for months because it was meant to be a quick finish, right? And I got so far, so a lot of it is pieced and pieced correctly. And then I think I put one piece on wrong, and I don't know if I think I unpicked it. I think that's what this is. But then I didn't have the energy to put it back or something. So I've got two bits that I need to make sure are in the right place, and then the quilt top will be done. So hopefully that bit will be quick, and then I can get on with the experiment of quilting it and seeing whether I can trim it straight with those excess corners, floppy bits that are going to be around the edge. Okay. Okay, so I've ironed it, pressed it in my way. A bit haphazard. Where's my sheet? It's under here. Yeah, okay. And now I have to go back to this because I can probably see where I got a bit confused. So I think I'm going to put it up here and see if that helps me. I did that before. So I think it's like this. So the yellow is at the bottom. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you, let me check if you can see that on the video. Hang on. Okay, so I've written out all the rows. Let me move these out of the way. Right. I've written out all the rows here. And so I've got this yellow one sticking out, that's right. I think I got confused here because there's a pink down here and I wasn't sure if that's where that should be. So I've got to go back to my sheet and see where there was an issue. Seems like there's more. Okay, I see it now. See, this is me having to remind me what I was even doing, right? Okay, so yellow, green, blue, purple, pink. It goes like that instead of yellow, green, you know, so it looks funny now, but once it's all together, it should look like it's coming down in the colors. Does that make sense? I don't know. Right, so, okay, let's try this one and see if we are wrong or right where we are supposed to be. So we've got, so I'm counting the blacks because that's what's in my sheets of 2, 4, 6 blacks. So where do I have that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, there, okay. And then I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the next row, and it has to go down by 1. So do I have 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I don't. So is that right or not? Just checking this again. So there should be 1 blue square and then purple. So I'm just looking at my rows here, if you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think this might be the problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need another black square. Okay, so let's see if I have one somewhere. So I don't, so I'm gonna cut one from this and then see if we can't get this to work out. Oh, I better press that with this. So this is how I normally work, kind of just fly by the seat of my pants, and then I write it down later. That's what you see in the blog. So when I'm working it out, I haven't already done all the math. That comes later. So, right, I need a 5-inch square. Okay, so I've got another 5-inch square, which I cut. I'm gonna piece it onto here, and then I will come back and figure out whether I have to fix anything else. Okay, so I'm back. I've sewed on my 6th black square, so that needs to go. So because I'm not doing the setting triangles, right? Then if I was doing the setting triangles, then this would be the edge, you see? So I would like add this half triangle to the top and bottom of each row, if that makes sense. Because I'm not doing that, it can be kind of hard to look at and go, where's the side? So I think what it's supposed to be is this one's jutting out the top, then this one would line up with this one, and that's how I get my 6 going down. So let me just pin it like that and see if it starts to look right. Yeah. Okay. That looks all right. Cool. Now, I think I have one too many here. No, maybe I don't. Okay, so this is right now. Right, so same with over here. This looks like it's jutting out a bit, but I'm gonna cut off that there and that there, so there's only gonna be a teensy weensy bit of these corners. That's what happens if you don't use the setting triangles. Obviously there's a reason people use them. I'm not telling you don't use them, but I just didn't want to have to work out how many I had or cut them or sew them on. I'd rather trim off, because I already had the charm pack squares, so and this was supposed to be fast. Obviously it's not fast because I messed it up and then I left it for months, but otherwise it could be fast. So if you do it, it could be fast. Right, next section. Hopefully this one's right. So that's 6. So this should be, let me check my sheet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. Do I have 6 again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I do. Okay, cool. So this hopefully is correct. So again, I need to offset it by 1. So I'm going to line it up here. I don't know if you can see that there with the top of this one. There. Okay. Need a pin. Right. Yeah, okay. Oh, I need another pin there. My design wall is not big enough, so I'm going to fold that. So you can't really see the top of that. But, and it's a bit skew. The way I pinned it, it's a bit skew-if. It's not really skew-if. But you can see, hopefully now, pink, purple, blue, green, yellow, and the black on the top with the kind of mountaintops, whatever you want to call them, right? So that now looks right. I can see what that's going to be. So I think now I just need to piece these two together and then to this, and that should be my quilt top. But what I want to do, just so I can start thinking about backing and batting options, is just measure it and see roughly what it's going to be. I'm sure I knew when I designed it, but I don't remember. So, okay. Okay, so obviously leaving off the jutty triangles, we're looking at about 45, looks like, by, leave off the jutty triangles, 50-ish. Okay, 50 something. Right, okay, so that helps. Because I think I have some flannel, flannel blankets. Not flannel. I keep saying flannel when I mean fleece. I've got a whole other video, two actually. I've got one video about fleece backing specifically, another video about lots of different quilt backing options, and then one more recent about different alternative batting options, and fleece was one of them. And some folk just use the fleece backing without the batting. I'm going to use both because I want it to be warm and I want it to be cushy in case it gets end up using on the floor like a playmat, which baby quilts often will. So yeah, so I'm going to look. I think I might have a blanket, hopefully, that would already be the right size, and then I don't have to piece anything, which would be awesome. But I think I might still have to piece batting because I don't want to use a great big piece of anything for this. So anyway, I said I would talk about the size. I'll just get to that. So crib size is usually probably a bit smaller than this, crib baby size. However, so my kids are 5 and 7, so they were babies relatively recently, and I know I would never put, and nobody else I know in this generation would put a quilt or a blanket in a crib. It's just like against the current safety regulations. Maybe they're regulations. Advice? Anyway, what we all were told to do, basically, I'm in the UK, so maybe it is different elsewhere, but anyway, in the UK and in Canada, where my sister has recently had babies as well, the advice is those sleep sacks. So it's like a little sleeping bag that goes over the baby, and then it has little poppers at the shoulders, and it keeps them warm, but they can't get anything over their head or suffocate or anything like that, and that's what everybody I know uses. So a baby quilt, while it's still a lovely gift, doesn't need to be the size of a crib or a cot or whatever the baby is sleeping in, because that's probably not where it's going to get used. So I tend to make mine bigger to either be used as playmats or just to grow into as like a toddler quilt for a toddler bed, or like a drag around the house, make a den with it quilt, or snuggle on the sofa watching Paw Patrol kind of quilt. That's kind of usually the size that I aim at. So I tend to go bigger rather than smaller. When I want to go smaller, I would make a stroller quilt. So I have another video about that as well. So they're even smaller than like a crib quilt, and you sew like little Velcro straps so they can attach to the side of the stroller, almost like a leg warmer, if you've seen those. So they can be quite good gifts as well if you're looking for an alternative to a baby quilt. But anyway, that's why it's slightly bigger than you might think for a baby quilt. So I'm going to sew this up, and then I will come back and do next steps.
So for this quilt, to join the rows together, I just joined them together, nesting the seams as you would any quilt, except that my rows were different sizes because I was starting from the top corner and working in and the other way and sort of meeting in the middle. So each time I joined one row to another, I had, a square essentially sticking out the top of the next row or the row before, depending which direction I was sewing. So I'm going to explain that more as I join the big row in the middle to the other section of the quilt.
So obviously, because I've got this extra square and I'm offsetting every time, I'm not lining up this seam with this because it's going to be a little bit over. So I'm going to the next one. Because like if there was a setting triangle, for example, there would be a seam here, right? There'd be the 1/4 inch. So I am nesting these ones. So the first join in the next row, if you see what I mean. So, and then I'm sewing down from there. So I'm going to keep trying to nest each square, but I'm not trying to, if I tried to line up this edge with here, I'd be off every time. So this would be, can you see, this would be off that seam here. So I'm going to let this be a little further. Let me see if I can show you on one that's already sewn. So here, so this is the subsequent row, right? So this square is sewn a little bit past where the 1/4 inch is, and everything's going to get trimmed, so that will be fine. And even if you can still see that, my binding will cover it because it's going to be the edge of the quilt, right? Obviously, you can go ahead and figure out your setting triangles, but that's not going to be in my free pattern on my blog because I'm not doing setting triangles. This is like a let's skip that bit sort of a version. Okay, so anyway, so I'm going to go along and nest each of these joins as I go, but for this first one I'll do my little back stitch, but I will just let it be over the subsequent seam and not worry about that at all. When I get over the first seam, that's when I go and check that the next one's good. And I don't iron in any particular. Often I would iron open if I was, but right now I'm just kind of moving the seam in the way that makes sense to nest. You can obviously be more methodical about it. And maybe your quilts will turn out better than mine. That's fine. Right, so I'm in that one, and then I just go and line up this one. And I said I would explain about not unpicking the black. So lots of folks said in the comments that if I got rid of the, because I was, debating whether or not to finish these projects. By the end of the video, I had decided I was going to finish this one. However, people were still saying it would make a good baby quilt, because that's what I said it was going to be, if I got rid of the black squares and just maybe added some more colorful ones. I personally like the black. I like the contrast of the black with the colors. That's kind of where the idea originally came from. And there's a couple of things with the black and baby quilts. Now, if it was black and white, I could tell you the black is for contrast because babies see black and white and then red before they see any other colors, but that's not really why. But my sister did once tell me that white, which I've often done for baby and toddler quilts, was not a good idea because babies have all sorts of accidents in various shades of things, for want of a better term, and that can kind of stain a white quilt. So,
So that's, I hadn't thought of that, even though I'd had children myself. I wasn't quilting when my kids were tiny, tiny. So I hadn't appreciated that. And I did give her an I Spy quilt with a white background. She does like it and they use it, but I think she's more careful with it than she wants to be. So. And the friend who I'm making this for, so her name is Liz, and she's having a baby in November. I don't think she'll mind the black. I think she will, it'll probably suit her sensibilities as well as my own. So I'm going to keep it in. Okay, so here it is, pieced. The quilt top's finished. That wasn't so hard. Why did I leave it so long? So sometime, I don't know what the state of your UFOs were, but this is the reason that this one was in that category, because it was like, it really wouldn't take that much time to get the quilt top itself actually finished. I just needed to do it. It's 10:45 in the morning, Monday morning, still time checking myself. And I think I started it, I mean, also I'm filming and, you know, changing camera angles and things, at like 9:30, 9:45. And it wouldn't take an hour if I wasn't filming it, right? So anyway, so that's done. Next thing I need to do, obviously, if I want to keep this momentum going and get it done, is to sort of batting and backing. So backing first, I am hoping this is going to be big enough. This is a thin fleece blanket. It's kind of a sagey green color. It's fairly thin, but it's nice and soft. So that's where I want to use it. It's 47 by 59. And how wide did I say this was? Because obviously it needs to be a little bit bigger to get it on the long arm, right? So let's see, 45. So it might not quite be, I might be pushing it with the width. Do you know what I mean? But I am going to trim stuff off. I don't know if it's going to work. It might be too small. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work, because with the corners, which I think I should really cover and kind of quilt up to so that I can trim properly, it's 49. So that's a no-go. So I need to find another idea. Okay, back in a mo. I've got this. Oh, don't do that. Ah, right, okay. This is very heavy. Right, got this, which is, I think that is flannel. That would be fine. I've also got, this is a duvet cover, so it's one side is, that's just fabric I bought from somebody on eBay. This is a duvet cover. One side's gray, one side's white, but I think I prefer a color. What have I got anymore? I've got bits of fleece, but it's small at this point, mostly. That would take me ages to piece. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna hold on to this and see if it's big enough. Hang on. Now there's always this thing though, like, because if it's too big, then you're like, oh, but that would work for a bigger quilt, and do I cut it up? But I want to get it done, and it would be, this is quite nice and childlike, isn't it? And bright like this. What do we think? I don't know. It's too late if you're saying no, because I've either done it or I haven't, right? Let's see. So I would have to piece it, clearly, but maybe just one join. So one. Wait, where was I? I was there-ish. So the same again. Would be to here. So yeah, I would have some left over, I think. But it would be big enough. So I'd have that much left. But I guess I do have other pieces in there that things could be pieced to. So I think I'm gonna go with the orange and pink. There's no orange in it, and obviously orange is in the rainbow. So here, I'm putting orange in now. That works, eh? Okay. Right, I need to piece this. So this is not the way to do it, guys, but when I'm trying to get something done quickly, I just cut lots of corners. Sometimes it's a good idea, sometimes it's not. So anyway, I am, oops, that's my iron making noise, right? I'm holding this, so this would be, so this is not probably how you should piece the backing.
what I'm gonna, so I've got this fold here. I can see this is the length though. So I'm gonna stitch down here before I cut it. And then I'm gonna cut here and here. My sides might be a bit raggedy, but I really need the top and the bottom to be straight in order to get it to work on the long arm. So that's what I'm thinking. So this is just me cutting corners because I want to be done this quilt. So we'll see. All right, so I'm leaving myself a little bit of space up here so I can then eventually cut this off and make it one big piece. So I'm not gonna stitch all the way up to the fold. So I've got it folded here, right? I'm not gonna stitch all the way up to the fold there, but I should probably make sure that this is also correct down here. I mean, I know I'm giving you instructions, but I really don't think you should copy me. This is just me being lazy ass, but anyway. So I did a little back stitch, but I've got a little gap where I can cut the fold down to open it up.
So if I wasn't making total sense there, basically instead of cutting 2 equal pieces that I would then sew together to make the backing, I folded it in half to the width I wanted, and now I'm sewing before I cut it. Feels easier to me, might not really be.
So now I have it sewn like this. I've got, let me turn it around so you can see. I've got this extra bit on the end I don't need, and I've got a fold here that I don't need. So I am going to cut the fold open. I didn't leave myself, I don't think, a big enough thing for my big scissors. So I'm going to start with the small scissors first and then use the big ones. So there, now I can use the big ones. Right, so I am breaking 2 rules. Quilting rules aren't a real thing, but people think they are. And I'm breaking a couple of them here. So one, you're probably supposed to square stuff up, check everything's right before you cut things, make sure your sides are gonna be the right length, all this stuff. And because my only straight edges are gonna be the top and bottom, I'm gonna have a seam running, how can I show you? Right, so let's say this is the quilt back, and I'm putting it on the long arm. This is the top roller and the bottom. I'm gonna have a seam running this way, which isn't an amazing idea because you're stretching the backing on the long arm. So you're kind of not meant to do that. If you're piecing it and putting it on a long arm, you're supposed to have the seams going that way. But I often break that rule and it's fine. So usually works out. But I'm not advising anybody else. I'm just telling you what I do. I have days where I want to be super precise and days where I absolutely do not. And today is one of those days. Okay, so that's that side. And now I got to get rid of this tail here. So I'm just kind of looking at where it lines up with the stars. I get that this is not, but this is gonna be bigger. I purposely made it wider than I needed so that it wouldn't cause any huge issues if it's a little off on the side. Everything's gonna get trimmed. So I'm just gonna try and hold it straight and then see where it gets to on the stars. Okay, cool. So, time check. Let me sit down. I think my head's probably going off the top of the video all the time. Time check, it is 11. And I'm hoping that when I hold this up, it's gonna be the right size. And I will have my backing fabric done. Right. Okay, so let's check. Right. So I'm holding it up above here where the points are. So it is longer than I need, and it is wider than I need, which is all I need for the backing. That's fine. Cool. So I'm going to press this center seam, and then I'm going to load the backing on the long arm, and then I'm going to sort out the batting. Cool. I'm doing well. This is going faster than I thought it was going to go. Okay, cool.
So the reason I can't actually advise this method that I've just used to you is because the way that you generally load a quilt back on the long arm, you're trying to center it and you fold it in half and you cut a little notch in the middle at the top and the bottom, and then that guides where you attach it to the leader cloths. So I did do that. And because my sides were not necessarily even, I was kind of expecting to have one side sort of floppier than the other once I rolled it up. Somehow, something was smiling on me today because it worked. It was fine. I didn't have any sagging or anything. So it worked out for me today. But if you were to do this on a regular basis and have your two sides not exactly the right, perfectly straight, for example, then when you fold it in half, your middle points are going to be off top and bottom. So don't necessarily do as I do, but in this case, it worked out all right for me. So, yeah.
Okay, so my backing is now loaded on the long arm. Time check, 11:25. So now, batting. I have talked in a video a month or so ago, can't remember how long, about alternative battings, sheets, towels, that kind of stuff. But I do have some bamboo scraps, which is my favorite type of, commercial quilt batting, bamboo. So I'm going to see if I have enough. I think I'll have to piece it though. Franken batting. I've also got another video about how you can do that. But, and this I have, because I have so many scraps of different kinds of batting and other things. This says bamboo. This is a smaller one, says bamboo. So I know they can go together. So I'm going to take that off and see what I have to work with. This is the bigger one, so I'm going to start with this. I have this problem of like, if I see somebody selling or destashing like a whole roll of something, not a roll. I don't mean like a roll with meters and meters and meters. I mean like a package, like say for a queen or a king size quilt. I'll buy that and I'll use it for a throw size, and then I'll have all this stuff left over. So that's often what I end up doing. So let's see how much we need to add to this to get it to work. So
I played around with the batting a bit, figured out where I needed to cut so that I could use a few pieces to make it into one big piece.
Okay. All right. So I am going to try pinning this up. So I want it a little longer on the bottom as well. So I'll pin it about here. I often would do this on the floor, but I've got other stuff on my floor today. So I'm going to try and do it on here. Right. Then this one. So that's definitely long enough. So what I need is a section over here. So let's see. Turn it around because there's a straighter edge on this side. Ooh. Okay, so I don't mind that it's overlapping or it's going to be bigger. I can trim that. So I just want something that's going to be wide enough to cover that side. Okay, now, where was that smaller bit? Maybe that would work. No, definitely not. Definitely not. It's a little shorter on that side, but I think it will do. Just about. Okay, so I'm going to piece this to this and then trim the end off and see where I'm at.
So this is the kind of task that I don't love, piecing batting together. I don't think it's anybody's favorite part of quilting, but it does stretch my batting further so I can use it for more quilts. And this is kind of why I set myself this deadline of let's start this UFO on Monday and have it finished by Tuesday, because otherwise I would procrastinate on things like piecing the batting or loading the backing on the long arm, even all those little tasks that just are not that entertaining. So this is where the deadline really helped me. But all I'm doing, basically, if you've never done Franken batting before, is doing a zigzag stitch. So I'm just butting the two pieces of batting next to each other and doing a zigzag stitch to attach it. You need to make sure they've got edges that are the same as each other. In this case, they were straight, so that was fine. But if they're not, you would want to cut them to make them match. But I do have another video, as I said, about that if you've never done it before and you want to see how to. The link will be in the description. Okay, so I've been wasting time swithering about thread. I was going to go with that on the top, and then I was thinking, because I have these pre-wound bobbins, which I use sometimes, not amazing quality, but they work, they're fine. I will put the link in the description, but I like them just because they're pre-wound and they're the size for my Moxie. And this color matched quite well, but then I was like, oh, the backing. I'm not a huge fan of the contrasting thread on the back. For me, it doesn't, I know it can look good, but like, if you make any mistakes, you can see them so much. So anyway, I was looking at the orange. This one matches it pretty good there, but it means I have to wind the bobbins. That's fine. I have the bobbin winder. So I'm going to do that, but now I'm swithering about whether or not to still use that on the top and then have all the issue of if there's even the slightest tension issue, I'm going to see either teal on the back or orange on the front, or to use maybe this orange because I don't have more of this one, so I can't use the same one. I'll run out before the end of the quilt, I think. This one on the front as a less of an obvious contrast if there's tiny tension issues. So I'm wasting time swithering. I need to just decide. I think I've decided on that for the bobbin. So I'm going to wind the bobbins and think about the top thread and then keep going. So this is me floating the quilt top. I've already done one line of stitching across to secure the batting. And then normally what you would do is line up the top of your quilt top with that line of stitching, which you do in a straight line. And then you would base the top of the quilt right under that. In this instance, I'm just doing the very tippy tops of those squares. So I didn't know if that was going to work at this point, but it seemed to do okay. But I'm floating the quilt top here. What I'm not doing is attaching the end of the quilt to the last bar there that's right in front of my tummy. So sometimes you can use the red snappers, which are the bars that I use to attach the backing, to also do the end of your quilt top. And some folk find that easier. I generally don't do that. So anyway, I'm trying to be careful with it as I go so nothing gets wrinkled because it's not pulled tight at that bottom end. But I'm just doing some really simple loops. So this is sort of a back and forth rows of loops, one going up, one going down. I'll show you some close-up photos of the quilting later, but basically it went really, really quickly. Not every time that I go to the long arm does something go faster than I think. I know that's the kind of idea that folk who don't have a long arm have. They think it always goes super quickly. It kind of depends what you're trying to do. But in this instance, I was pleasantly surprised with how quickly it went. And I also made a quick decision about how I was going to quilt it, which is part of what makes it go quickly, because it's sometimes when you labor the choice of how to quilt it that it goes just a little too slowly. Anyway, so I was having to be slightly more careful as I got further down the quilt, which is usually my issue. That's when something tends to go a bit off, but I was fairly lucky. It was going pretty well. And I was able to keep it pretty much flat. And I quilted all the way to the edges of those triangles. I didn't stop where I was going to trim it. I decided to quilt the whole thing. I can always unpick those stitches and reuse the bits that I trimmed off, which I do sometimes when I'm watching TV. So as it turned out, quilting this on-point quilt, which I thought was going to be difficult for some reason, just because I'd never done it, turned out not to be difficult. Turned out to be quicker than I could ever have imagined. Okay, so I am super pleased about a couple of things. One, it is 1:15, and this quilt is completely quilted. Now, albeit I did something really simple with the quilting. It's nothing fancy, so it should have gone quickly, but it did. Somehow, and this has never happened, maybe I've never done a quilt this small on the long arm, I don't know, but I did it with one bobbin. I didn't have to wind a second one, so that was amazing. So I am going to cut this off. Well, I'll just take it off and then I will trim it. That's what I mean. Trim it and then bind it, and that will be me done. And it is Monday at 1:15. Now I have to go pick up the kids. I can't do this all before I pick them up. But I didn't think I was going to get this far. I thought maybe it would be halfway quilted by the time I went to bed tonight. So even though I was dithering about thread choices,
I think I've done pretty well, which kind of, I guess, shows you sometimes it's not worth procrastinating, because sometimes the thing's not going to take as long as you thought it was. Anyway, okay, so I'll get on with that and then I'll be back.
So I cleared a space on the floor for the trimming and used my great big 20-inch ruler. That's not required. You could use any big ruler really, but I was just lining it up with kind of the edges of those squares where they kind of jut out so that I could trim it straight, like it was in that original image at the beginning of the video. So as I said, I'll have some of this backing left over I can use for something else, and I'll have those little side triangles that I've trimmed off, but I probably will pick the stitching out and just put them in my crumb box, so it's not really wasted. And I think it probably, for me, did turn out to be easier to just sew it this way rather than to do setting triangles. But I get that won't be the same for everyone. So that's it trimmed. And then after I got the kids and they were happy with the snack and playing, I got the binding on. So I used kind of a teal color, and I think that kind of brightened it up a little bit. And I'm really happy with how it turned out and with how quickly I got it finished, and basically got a load off my mind as well, because that had just been sitting in a box and I didn't know if I would finish it or not. So anyway, so I feel like this whole video is all about just going ahead and trying to finish something that you've dropped, because sometimes it does turn out to be way easier than you thought, and certainly it is a satisfying feeling when you get it done.
So it's done, and it only took like a day. So lesson to me, don't just leave these things sitting here. They're super quick to finish. This one anyway. I know some of them, some UFOs, obviously you or I might have more to do, have left them more halfway through. But this one, there was really no reason not to finish it. I was almost there and I just left it. So I feel so much better now that it's done. I'm not sending it off yet. I'm going to wait for the birth announcement with the name, all important name, to put on the label. And once I have that, I will post it off and hopefully they'll be pleased with it. I know some folk didn't agree with the black. I like it. I think this is bright and happy. I put some, I think the bright binding kind of helps, the backing kind of helps. And I think it'll be versatile as like a playmat or a cuddle blanket on the sofa, which was what I had thought. So yeah, I'm feeling much better about that. So if you fancy having a go and making one similar, it's a free pattern. It's on my website. You can find the link in the description box under the video, and I hope you have fun with it. If you've not already subscribed and you like this video, please do consider it, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much for spending time with me. Bye.